What secret you found out about someone that you would never tell them? Story 1. I think I've told this story on here before. In elementary school, I saw one of my best friends eating pizza someone had thrown in a garbage can. I found out a bit later that his dad had lost his job, and his dad, his two sisters, and his mom were living on the streets. But he would have been devastated with shame if I had told him I knew. My mom eventually found out from me, and she bought him and his sisters lunch cards for the year, and breakfast cards too. The school lunch lady told them that they won them in a raffle. Story 2. Helping an elderly friend use her new MacBook Pro so she could look at her son's honeymoon pictures that he'd shared with her and the rest of the family. After setting things up on a little projector in the lounge, we all gathered around to watch the slideshow, which was beautiful. They went to Mauritius in South Africa. All was going well until we reached some very private, explicit close-up photos. Total shock. The parents are in their late 60s, early 70s. I didn't even think the father registered what he was seeing, but the mother, a super proud upper middle class type, practically froze on the spot. The other son swiftly unplugged the projector, and we all sat in silence for a moment until the father said, "Well, at least we know they had a jolly good time. We've never spoken about it again, and definitely never told the son and daughter-in-law that we saw those photos." Story 3. My cousin's husband has been having affairs for years. He is a high-powered business person, travels frequently, and pretty much has someone in every city. I know this because I interned at his company for a couple of summers. I didn't disclose that we knew each other, and only a couple of people in the office knew we had ties outside of work. Everyone there seemed to know what was going on. I didn't have the heart to tell my cousin at the time because she was a stay-at-home mom with 2 young girls. And the truth is, I was young, unsure, and afraid to say anything. As the years passed, it became more and more evident she knew exactly what was happening, but tolerated it because she enjoyed the lifestyle he provided and wasn't ready to give it up. I guess we all make our choices in life. Story 4. Not me, but my friend. I lived in central Missouri during high school, and I wasn't out of the closet yet. They're not too friendly to people like me in that area, I'll tell you that. Anyway, I was at a play rehearsal and backstage getting ready. I had left my phone up front in my seat where everyone would hang out while waiting for their turn. My boyfriend at the time texted me something that would have clearly outed me. My friend grabbed my phone because it went off, and he thought he'd play a little joke by replying with something funny. But when he saw what was texted, he just locked my phone and put it back. He never told anyone and kept it to himself until I came out 3 years later. I've had the deepest respect for him since. Maybe not the kind of story some expect, but he never said a word about it. Props to him. Story 5. I found out a married woman at work was having an affair with an ex-coworker. She'd go out for lunch and meet up with him pretty regularly, apparently. I was helping her with an Outlook problem one day where one of her emails wouldn't send and Outlook would crash. She asked me to fix it since it wouldn't open properly anymore, and she couldn't get any work done. So I started working on the problem, conveniently right before lunchtime. All I did was remove the account from Outlook, then restarted the client app, re-added the account, and everything was fine. The email in question was in her sent items instead of stuck in her outbox, and it included some extremely graphic content between her and this man. I was caught a little off guard by that, and confused when she ended up pregnant a few weeks later with another coworker's child. Story 6. I'm way too late, but I wanted to share this, especially since I can't ever speak about it in person with anyone. I found out a family friend's wife had an affair for years, up until a few months before his son was born. He might not be the biological father. She passed away from cancer when my friend and I were both teens. It devastated him. It came out of nowhere. She was in her 40s and started feeling unwell at the beginning of spring. After the chemo had no chance of success, they cared for her at home through summer, and she passed at the start of autumn. I'm friends with the entire family, but most closely with their son, who is my age. I always looked up to his father as well. His mother had a box with letters and diaries that she asked her kids to burn after she passed. They both promised they would, but my friend couldn't let it go, so he asked me to go through it. Among those things was an account of her long-term affair and her doubts about the child's paternity. I told my friend, and he later told his sister, but we all swore never to tell their dad. It doesn't matter who the biological father is. There is only one man he has ever called dad. Story 7. I found a letter one day while I was helping clean out our house. It was from my dad to my mom, about a very rough patch in their marriage that came close to ending. She thought he had been seeing someone. He was out late all the time with a man who was a known cheater. He smelled of cigarettes and alcohol. One time he even had lipstick on his collar. Through my dad's own admission in the letter, the man had accidentally revealed he was planning to leave the company and go solo. My dad, realizing this would leave him unemployed, blackmailed the man into helping him do the same. He wasn't cheating. He was secretly planning to quit his job, take some of the company's clients, and start his own business. He didn't want my mom worrying about how risky that decision was. The lipstick, from a stripper. Apparently, people under pressure still choose odd places to meet. But there was no choice. It was either jump ship or face direct competition from the man who had taught my dad everything. It totally paid off. That decision moved them up 2 tax brackets. They opened 10 or more businesses together and now have several hundred employees. Story 8. I was staying in a hotel with 2 other guys during our high school state tennis tournament. I really wasn't a fan of either guy. They were both kind of jerks. But we were teammates, so it's not like we fought constantly. Anyway, one of the guys went to take a shower, and while he was gone, the other saw a prescription bottle laying near the guy's suitcase and started asking what it was. He started reading it, and I quickly realized it was an antidepressant. So, despite really not liking the guy it belonged to, I lied to cover for him. I told the other one it was allergy medicine and that he was out of line for snooping in the guy's stuff. I might not like him, but that's a very personal thing, and I know for sure I wouldn't want anyone going through mine. Other teammates came out of the bathroom, and it was never brought up again. Story 9. Found my brother's note one day. This might get buried, but I don't have an identity here, and I need to get this off my chest. When my brother moved out, he gave me his computer. I went through it to make sure nothing important was still on it before wiping it clean. Halfway through, I found a Word file buried deep in some folders. The file was titled Because of You. My brother was a romantic type of guy. So, here I am, an innocent 15-year-old, thinking it's some kind of poem. I opened it and was hit hard. It was my brother's Suic note. He is one of the nicest, most cheerful, people-loving guys you could ever meet. It was shocking to realize how low he must have felt. I've never told anyone. I've tried to forget, but it's one of the hardest things to carry. My brother is still around. He's married and has kids. I know what pushed him to the edge, and I'm so grateful he never went through with it. I love you, brother. Edit. I posted this while on my way home from work just to let it out, since I've never shared it before. I didn't expect anyone to respond, but thank you to those who did. Someone suggested I talk to him about it privately. Trust me, I've thought about it, but it feels selfish. His life is going better than ever now, and bringing this back would feel like opening an old wound. I will carry this secret with me forever. That said, if you know someone going through a tough time or dealing with self-harm, please ask them. They won't hate you for it, and even if they get upset, they'll know someone cares. Please never make light of Suic. It's not something anyone takes lightly. And to the person who said I was snooping, yes, I was. But I was doing it for a good reason. Anyone with sense would check a device before erasing it. Anyway, if you're close to someone going through something dark, step forward. It's preventable. No one should have to lose someone they love. Story 10. I dropped my iPhone about 2 years ago and cracked the screen. My very religious, extremely vocal about morals brother-in-law, with 4 kids, offered to lend me his old phone until I got mine fixed. Great for me. When I swapped the SIM that night, it was still logged into his iMessage account and started downloading his entire chat history. I thought, okay, I don't need any of this, and was about to sign out, until I saw texts from different women I hadn't heard of, along with photo thumbnails. Curiosity got the better of me. Yeah, I know. And what I saw was shocking. The sting didn't even faze me. But the videos of him filming himself in the office bathroom mirror, full face visible, saying people's names, plus other ones in his basement while his family was asleep, were seriously disturbing. The rest included clips that showed him doing things I won't detail, and pictures from women asking for more money. Now he and my sister-in-law are going through massive problems. He says he wants to leave, calls her a bad mom, and is threatening to fight for custody. In my opinion, she's a great mother. The kids adore her. He has the money and resources to make life hard for her. And that's the sad part. I really hope they can work it out, because I saved everything. Story 11. Last year at work, someone left their phone in a conference room that I had just used for a meeting. I ran around asking everyone if it was theirs, but nobody claimed it. So I figured whoever was in the room before me probably had the meeting saved in their calendar. I opened the calendar, and instead of finding the meeting, I found some very personal entries. The person had scheduled private time with their wife twice a week. Along with those calendar events were notes where he was journaling about their prayers to strengthen their marriage. Things like, "Dear God, I just want to make her happy. How can I be a better husband? How can I make her love me?" When the phone's owner eventually surfaced, it turned out to be the sweetest guy from the design team, someone you'd never expect was going through something like that. It honestly made me feel sad for him. Story 12. In the 90s, I worked at a 1-hour photo shop and, oddly enough, ended up developing quite a few rolls of film for some of my high school classmates who dropped off disposable cameras. Everyone thought I was this awkward kid who was clueless around girls. The truth? I had seen more than I could ever talk about, but obviously I couldn't say anything. Edit. First of all, this was the 1990s. I was 15 or 16 at the time, and I didn't tell my boss because I was honestly too nervous. I processed the film and went on with my day like nothing had happened. And no, I didn't keep anything second. I wasn't snooping or anything. The printer we used showed a digital preview of each photo one at a time, so we could make color corrections before printing. Most of the rolls were things like duck face selfies, silly poses, smoking, and then, out of nowhere, more revealing photos. Years later, I had a regular customer who went to Fantasy Fest as a photographer. His photos? Let's just say, they were memorable. Story 13. I've got one, and I remember it like it was yesterday. My dad asked me to grab something from his car, some kind of document. My parents were going through a divorce at the time, and my dad had just moved into a new place, so the back seat was full of random stuff. While searching, I came across a manila envelope. Out of curiosity, I opened it, thinking it was more papers, but it was full of photos. The first one hit me like a brick. It was an extremely personal photo of my mom and dad during an intimate moment, clearly taken from my dad's point of view. I froze, but then, in shocked disbelief, flipped through a few more. I was scarred for life. To make it worse, I had this phase where I liked looking through drawers and nightstands just to see what people had. One day I snooped through my mom's stuff. Let's just say I found some things I really wish I hadn't. This happened when I was around 15 or 16. I'm 28 now. To this day, neither my mom nor dad knows what I saw. My wife does, though. Story 14. I once rented a room from this nice Christian family years ago. The father had some kind of degenerative disease that caused him to shake. I believe it was Parkinson's, but it might have been something else. Because of his condition, he couldn't work and was on disability. That particular day, my job closed early due to bad weather, so I was on my way back to the house. The home had a large glass window looking into the main living room, which had the family computer. As I approached the window, making my way to the front door, what do I see? The father was at the computer, watching adult content and, well, very involved. I thought, this is beyond awkward, and decided to walk down the street to visit a friend for an hour. Surely that would be long enough. I got back to the house and he was still at it. At that point, I walked back down the street, pulled out my cell phone, and called the house. Let's call him Steve. I said, "Hey Steve, we shut the shop down early today. I'm stopping by the supermarket on the way home. Do you need anything?" 30 minutes later, I returned to find Steve watching Top Gear on the sofa. I never said a word to him about it. Story 15. I haven't told anyone this. I work at a church where sometimes I answer the phones. There's an older man in our church that everyone loves. He's just that guy who gets things done. Not overly friendly, but always dependable and humble, doing the jobs no one else wants. One day I got a call from him, and I think he missed the hang-up button because the call didn't end. I could hear people yelling, so I stayed on the line. Probably shouldn't have, but curiosity got the better of me. It was him and his son in a major fight. The yelling, swearing, and harsh words shocked me. I'd never imagined that man speaking like that. I knew his son had struggled with addiction, and the man always seemed heartbroken about it. Eventually, I hung up. I decided to tell no one, since I shouldn't have been listening anyway. Last week, his son passed away from an overdose. I can't even begin to imagine the complex emotions he must be feeling. grief, guilt, frustration, and more. I feel deeply sorry for him, but after hearing that argument, I'll never look at him quite the same again. The whole situation is just heartbreaking. Story 16. I left my laptop at my friend's house and wanted to watch some Netflix. So I went up to my dad's office. That's not a typo. I have two dads, and grabbed my dad's MacBook. I went downstairs and got comfy on the recliner in the family room. As soon as I opened the laptop, a video started auto-playing in full screen. It was my stepdad, in a very private moment with another man who wasn't my dad. And based on the voice and background noises, I'm pretty sure my dad was the one filming it. The video was shaking a bit, and I could hear him in the background. This was all happening right in the very spot I was sitting. I slammed the laptop shut, put it back in the office, and tried to leave. But then I panicked. What if he noticed the video had moved? So I reluctantly opened it again, rewound the video to the start, and quickly shut it again. I had always suspected my dads might be in an open relationship, but that was not how I wanted to confirm it. Story 17. I found out that my father, who was a teacher at my high school, was cheating on my mom with another teacher from the attached middle school. I told my mom, but she didn't believe me. This went on for nearly a year before my father finally confessed to her on her birthday and said he wanted a divorce. He moved out on Valentine's Day. He had a child with the other woman, a half-sister I've never met. They moved to Alaska where things fell apart. He ended up being abusive toward her, and they divorced. Years later, he was scheduled for open-heart surgery in Seattle. I was told he died on the operating table. They sent me the obituary. I celebrated. I hated him with a passion. But it turns out he faked his death to avoid debts and legal trouble tied to abuse of yet another woman. He had been on the run for 8 years. Eventually, he contacted me with a long emotional story, saying he wanted to reconnect and make peace. I agreed to meet, but I turned him in. He cursed my name and promised revenge. I no longer have the same last name and don't live in the same state. I was notified he died in prison. I'm the last living member of that side of the family. His name and legacy died with him. I don't even know where he's buried, and I don't care. Story 18. I used to work at a very conservative Fortune 100 company that, at the time, had a very rigid and traditional corporate culture. Things have changed now with new leadership, but back then, the environment was quite outdated. My boss was a great person, kind, intelligent, and someone I suspected might be gay. At the time, though, being openly gay at this company just wasn't accepted. I was in my early 20s and admired him deeply. He mentored me during a time when it was hard to be taken seriously as a young woman in that setting. Outside of work, one of my best friends was, and still is, a very outspoken, hilarious stand-up comedian. He's openly gay, and our weekends were full of parties, loud music, and Sunday brunches with a big group of friends. One Sunday, he came into the restaurant, full of energy, pointed at me, and made an announcement about having spent the night with someone from my corporate world. He also shared a detail about that person's health, saying precautions were taken. I stood up in front of everyone and said something like, "If you know who he's talking about, please keep this private. This could destroy someone's career. He's a good person and doesn't deserve that. Please protect this information." Thankfully, no one ever said anything. My boss stayed at that company for 15 more years. He's since left, and from what I hear, he's finally living openly and fully himself. Story 19. My parents divorced when I was a toddler. I grew up with my mom and barely saw my dad. He's a recovering alcoholic now, but he used to drink a lot and had serious anger issues. He was never abusive, but his temper was something else. I'd always heard the story of the divorce from my mom's side. Nothing about it seemed especially dramatic, and I never really pictured them together anyway. I assumed the separation had mostly been my dad's fault. A few years ago, I asked him about it, not expecting much. He said he never thought he'd tell me and that I should never bring it up with my mom. He told me that one day he found her journal, laid out, open, almost as if she wanted him to read it. He thought maybe she was trying to share something with him, so he read a few pages. Instead, he found cruel entries. She made fun of his clothes, his personality, even his goals. She thought he was boring and out of touch. He said after that, it became hard to trust or love her the same way. He felt betrayed. That, along with hating his job and starting to drink, contributed to everything falling apart. I never would have guessed. I felt heartbroken for him. He had been hoping to understand his wife better, and instead he found pain. It changed how I see both of them. I still love my mom deeply, but the story fits. She does carry herself with a certain pride, and even if she hides it from others, I believe now that side of her exists. It's been 40 years since their divorce. She doesn't need to know that he read her journal, or that I know. I'm glad I do, but it would only bring her pain. Story 20. This is a throwaway. I don't know if this will be seen, but I need to get it off my chest. I'm a guy in my mid-40s now, but back when I was around 22 or 23, one of my closest friends was ending a very toxic relationship. The girl he had been seeing had cheated on him multiple times. She was a few years younger. They had started dating when he was 19 and she was 16. As a way to move on, he decided to leave the state and start fresh. We were out in the loft above his dad's barn one night, our usual hangout spot. The lower level was a workshop, but the loft was our chill zone. We'd been drinking and smoking when I noticed his old guitar case behind some boxes. I pulled it out to mess around with the guitar, and when he opened the compartment inside, a yellow envelope fell out. Written on it in handwriting that was clearly hers was, "If anything ever happens to me, give this to the state authorities." It had her full name on it. It was eerie. He said she had given it to him years ago, early in their relationship, and he had completely forgotten about it. Curious, and a little out of it, we decided to look inside. What we found changed the way I looked at the world forever. Inside were about 24 Polaroid photos. She looked extremely young in them, maybe 13 or so, and completely out of it. The first few were already disturbing, but then it got worse. Some of the photos appeared to show her being taken advantage of while restrained. The most disturbing part? In several of the images, there were clearly identifiable adults. One was the county sheriff, still in parts of his uniform. Another was a local official, and one was a very well-known pastor from the community. We went from celebrating my friend's fresh start to being absolutely horrified. He confronted her about it. She broke down and admitted that, during a rough time in her childhood, she had been groomed and exploited by someone in her neighborhood. He had used drugs and alcohol to control her, and the photos were taken as a way to blackmail others or protect himself. She had broken into his trailer one night and stolen the photos. Out of fear, she gave them to my friend, hoping he would keep them safe. By the time we discovered them, some of the people in those pictures had already disappeared from town or were being investigated. At her request, my friend burned the photos. He moved away, got married, started a family, and built a new life. I still live here. I'm still Facebook friends with her. She never knew I saw the photos. I've quietly helped her whenever I could, finding housing, helping with job searches. Stories like this always seem like they belong in a documentary or headline, but I saw it. I still wish I hadn't. Story 21. I've posted this before, but I used to work for a mobile provider, and one day a man came in to complain about mobile data overages. He'd racked up almost 10 gigabytes during the previous month and had gone over his cap for the last few billing cycles. He was confused, as he was adamant that he only used the phone for light email. I asked to see his phone and started looking through it until I got to the browser history. There were dozens of links to adult websites. I must have shown my surprise on my face, because when I looked up at the man, I caught sight of his 12-year-old son staring at me, his face bright red and horrified. I deleted the history promptly and cleared the overages in the system. I told the man there had been an issue with his device, which I had resolved, and that it wouldn't happen again, while giving a quick wink to his son, especially if he made sure to stay on Wi-Fi while using the phone at home. We've all been that age, and I figured he didn't understand how much data video streaming used. He never came back, so I assume his son figured it out. Story 22. When I was about 14, I was at a coffee shop with a friend. Some random man in the shop recognized me and said he was friends with one of my older brothers. I'll call this brother Duke and his friend Bubba. They were in their late 20s. This man, Bubba, was a friend of the brother who, despite all of us making mistakes in our youth, had remained somewhat of an outcast among our siblings well into adulthood. Perhaps due to his complicated past, Duke had warned me about some of his friends before. Even so, since he had always been a mysterious figure in my life, I was curious about my beloved big brother. I looked up to Duke. He was in and out of my life when I was a kid. I loved him dearly, and I was always interested in learning more about him. The three of us started talking. Bubba casually mentioned that Duke and his now ex-girlfriend had a child. When he asked how the child was doing, I was completely shocked. This was a child I had never heard of, a child I knew nothing about. a child that would have made me an aunt, my brother's uncles, and would have been my dad's first grandchild, and my mother's first step-grandchild. When I told Bubba I had no idea what he was talking about, he casually replied, "Well, I guess that's why they broke up then." After doing some digging, I later found out from mutual friends that they had a baby girl and gave her up for adoption. No one else in my family knows my other oldest brother had a child that same year, and I officially became an aunt at 15. My parents got their grandchild. Duke got his next girlfriend pregnant shortly after, and I've lived my whole life knowing that this nephew has a sister he knows nothing about, and that I have a niece I will likely never meet. Story 23. Heard my crush using the bathroom once. I was in class and I really had to pee, but just as I was about to get up to go, my crush stood up before me and went to the restroom. Normally this wouldn't have been an issue, since most of the bathrooms at our university were separated by gender, with the exception of the one next to my classroom, which was co-ed. Unable to hold it any longer, I sprinted from the classroom and into the co-ed bathroom. I quickly stood in front of the urinal and released urine with such force it felt like it might break something. Just as I was shaking off the last few drops, I heard a loud sound from one of the stalls, followed by a clear splash indicating that something had landed. I stood there shocked, realizing with horror that my crush didn't know anyone else was in the bathroom with her. It only took 2 seconds before the smell reached me. It was awful, like something rotten mixed with salt water that had been left too long. I quickly took off my shoes to muffle the sound and snuck out of the bathroom, not even bothering to flush the urinal. Story 24. Back when I was 18, I tried to reconnect with my estranged father. Everyone said he had changed. I hadn't spoken to him since I was 13. At the time, my mom and I were having problems, and my dad offered to let me stay with him. I accepted. During that time, he tried things that made me deeply uncomfortable. I had to defend myself, and I started sleeping with added precautions every night because I feared something terrible might happen. He tried to give me substances and behaved in ways that made it clear he was trying to manipulate me. I left within a month, got my own place, and we never had a normal father-daughter relationship again. Just two people who barely acknowledged each other. At the time, he was going through a separation with his third wife and was staying at his mother's house, my Nana. So I partially stayed with them, and she turned a blind eye to everything. After I left, I found out he turned his attention to my cousin, his brother's daughter. He manipulated her and eventually assaulted her while they were both under the influence. I only learned about this because her boyfriend ended up working for me as a courier. On a long drive, he told me about what had happened to my cousin, not knowing the man involved was my father. When I told him, he was shocked and said he had no idea it was my dad. So now I know what happened, but I can't speak on it. It's her story to tell, not mine. I truly dislike him, and people still wonder why I can't just be civil to get access to his wealth. Story 25. I'm sure this won't really gain attention since the thread is nearly gone now, but once at a sleepover, I walked in on my friend holding a hunting rifle in his mouth. He had invited my girlfriend, myself, and his best friend to stay the night. About 3 to 4 hours in, he disappeared. I figured he had gone to the bathroom, but I also knew about his struggles with depression, so I decided to check on him. I eventually found him in his dad's room with the weapon. I remember quietly saying, "Hey man, what's going on?" in a really calm, low voice. I didn't want to startle him. He put the rifle down, I asked to see it, turned the safety back on, and got him to come back downstairs. He later told me it was just a toy or something, but I had held it in my hands and it was definitely real. I had almost forgotten it happened until I told my girlfriend, and she said I had put myself at serious risk. He eventually stopped talking to me, probably out of a mix of shame and complicated feelings, but he took a year off school and has started focusing on his mental health. I'm really proud of him. Story 26. A couple down the street like to have a few drinks and occasionally smoke when they're in the mood for intimacy. Many years ago, during a break in one of their sessions, they decided to visit a live cam site. While browsing, they came across their daughter, who was doing cam work to help pay for university, something they had absolutely no idea about. Because of the alcohol and the relaxed atmosphere, instead of panicking, they started chatting with her without revealing who they were. They have never told her they saw her, even though she's long since stopped doing it. They ended up watching her multiple times, even paying extra for private chats to help her save money, since she hated asking them for financial support. All the while, they chatted with her anonymously, They actually found the experience liberating and felt proud of how she was handling things independently. They also realized she did duo shows with her flatmate, whom they had met many times, so sometimes they'd end up chatting with both of them. Now, when this couple has had a drink, there's a small window where they're just tipsy before becoming incoherently silly. During that window, I've learned they'll say just about anything. That's how I found out about their daughter and her flatmate, both of whom I've met many times over the years. They've even told me their home safe combination and credit card pins. I've also heard some of the strange stories they've shared while in that state. The next day, they never seem to remember anything they talked about. I've never let the couple or their daughter know that I'm aware of any of it. Although for a while, it was a little weird being around the daughter. She's very attractive. And of course, I had to do a little research and check out her profile. They're all good people though, so there's no reason to embarrass them. Story 27. I found a note my mother had written, then crumpled up and thrown away. It was a farewell letter. I discovered it under the driver's seat of the family car one day while she was in the store. She had been struggling with chronic pain, peripheral neuropathy, and the early stages of bone marrow cancer. She was on very heavy medication, nearly at morphine level. She felt hopeless about the pain and the emotional and financial burden it placed on the family. Her plan was to take a large dose of her strongest medication and wash it down with a bottle of alcohol. We didn't usually keep liquor in the house, so I suddenly understood why a bottle had appeared in the cupboard a couple of weeks earlier. She had already made preparations. She never went through with it. Instead, she chose to endure several more years of suffering before cancer eventually took her. I sometimes wonder if it would have been better for her had she gone through with it, and that thought makes me feel horrible. It's a terrible thing to watch your mother suffer and slowly fade away. I never told her that I had found the note. I just crumpled it back up, put it in my pocket, and threw it away in a dumpster later that night. Story 28. My very attractive friend once accidentally swiped right on my best friend because she thought the Tinder profile belonged to a different guy in the same photo. She snapped me in a panic, asking if she should unmatch him quickly before he ever saw it. But he had already seen it. He immediately came into my bedroom. We lived together in college, excited to tell me the great news. I knew he had been feeling pretty low about himself, and it gave him a huge boost of confidence. I couldn't bring myself to tell him the truth. But here's something else about him that's a bit less heartwarming. We were at a music festival last summer with our other best friend. The two of us ended up meeting people and hooking up, while he didn't, and I think that made him feel left out. On the last night, he claimed he had slept with a girl who went to school with my friends. We clapped for him and congratulated him for losing his virginity, making it a bit of a moment. I met that same girl at a party a month later, just before everyone went off to college. She asked me about him and mentioned that he seemed really upset that night because they didn't actually do anything, and that he never replied to her message afterward. That's a serious secret, and I know if I ever bring it up, he'll absolutely lose it. Story 29. I found out the truth about one of my friend's parents. I went out with him for his 21st birthday to have dinner with his parents. I had always wondered why his parents seemed so old. I mean, both his dad and mom were in their late 60s or early 70s. I didn't think much of it. But when we got back to his house, I overheard his parents talking about whether they should tell him. Long story short, they caught me eavesdropping and ended up telling me everything, then made me promise not to say a word. My friend's parents were actually his grandparents, and his whole life he believed his sister was his sister, but in fact, she was his mother. She had passed away some time ago, so they never planned to tell him. They adopted him at birth because his mother had struggled with serious addiction issues, and his biological father had been involved in criminal activity and dangerous associations. So now I'm the only person who knows the truth about his family. Story 30. A coworker I had always really admired turned out to have a side I didn't expect. He's very involved in certain extreme online communities, with views that are extremely exclusionary and political. Let's just say he has some very troubling beliefs. There's absolutely no way I could bring myself to confront him. It hurts because I'm a gay woman, and he knows I lean more progressive in my values. I got too curious and ended up finding some of his social media activity. We've had a great connection at work for a few years, and I really wanted to become better friends. He's always been kind to me. He asks about my hobbies, wants to know my opinions, and we joke around often. We exchange small gifts. I always say hello and goodbye because I thought he genuinely appreciated it. Most people find him hard to talk to, but not with me. Discovering what he actually thinks about people like me and about many of our coworkers was shocking. I feel torn between wanting to believe that being good to him might have some effect and knowing that it likely won't. Why should I keep putting in effort for someone who might hold so much resentment? It really broke my heart. Story 31. Very late to the thread, but here's my contribution. It happened when I was about 10 or 11. One day my dad came back from work, left his phone on the table, and went into the bathroom. He had a new flip phone, and I wanted to check if it had any fun games like Tetris or Snake, whatever phones had back then. When I unlocked it, I saw an unread message, and for some reason I opened it. The message said something along the lines of, "Thank you for today on the back seat." My dad usually spent around 20 minutes in the bathroom reading or just relaxing, so I had some time to scroll through the conversation. I was shocked by the very first message, but curiosity kept me reading. From the text, it became obvious that my dad was having an affair with someone from his office. Looking back, I now realize how overly dramatic and cringy those messages were. I left the phone exactly where it was, in total disbelief. I couldn't imagine that someone could cheat on their partner. Later, I would hear him talking to her on Skype or on the phone when my mom wasn't home. He didn't even try to hide it from me. Maybe he thought a 10-year-old wouldn't understand or remember. Eventually, I found a message that said, "We can't see each other anymore, but I'll always remember you." I've never told my dad that I know, not even now as an adult. Honestly, I have no reason to, and I never told my mom either. I was too afraid they might separate. So yeah, they're still together. Story 32. I was always under the impression that a friend's husband died in a car accident. That was the story she told me. The one others had told me, and the one her 3 kids believed. Kids who were all under 5 when it happened. Since it happened out of state, I never looked up any news articles or details. I recently found out the truth. He actually died during a game of Russian roulette. His so-called friends told him the gun wasn't loaded, and they were all intoxicated enough not to double-check. That's a secret I'll take to my grave. There's absolutely no reason her kids need to ever hear that, especially considering how fast rumors can spread in a small town. Maybe she'll tell them one day when they're old enough to process it, but I know it's not my place to bring it up, and I wouldn't want to reopen that pain by telling her I know. Story 33. The boss at a place I used to work had zero clue how to use a computer and barely understood his mobile phone. One day, his wife's car registration was overdue, and he needed to pay it online. He handed me his phone and opened the messages to show me a photo of the credit card he wanted to use. Then he left the phone with me so I could take care of it. I went online and paid the registration. While scrolling up to find a picture of the back of the card, I came across something I wish I hadn't. Photos he had taken of himself in explicit situations with his wife, accompanied by very detailed messages. I finished paying the registration, printed the receipt, returned the messages to the original screen, and gave the phone back to him. 2 days later, his wife came in to have lunch with him. It took everything in me not to blush in front of them. One of the photos involved a cucumber, and another had some kind of round bottle or tin. Let's just say it changed the way I saw him, and not in a way I ever wanted. Story 34. After a friend passed away, his son came to town to handle the estate. We all chipped in to help. He was older, had lived alone, and his son lived overseas. Once the paperwork and services were handled, the son flew home with the ashes, and we were left to finish cleaning out the house. While sorting through some of his things, I came across an old hard drive buried among random items. I decided to check it in case it had important files. Most of it was old pictures, army days, cars he had owned. He was a big car guy. Then I found that folder, the one you hope never to stumble upon. It was full of writings about his more private side, personal stories involving intense kinks, like certain physical experiences and fantasies. He wrote about his ex-wife, how she didn't understand his needs, and how that caused their marriage to fall apart. I had never known that side of him. I didn't tell anyone. Well, sort of. One of our friends was in the room when I opened it, and I just said, "I found his weird folder." My friend said, "Delete it." And I did. That's what friends do. Miss you, buddy. Story 35. I had a crush on this girl back in college. She made it seem like there might be mutual interest, but eventually told me she couldn't date me because she was Christian and believed we were unevenly yoked. One night, we were working the same shift at the front desk of a residence hall. She went on rounds and I asked if I could use her computer. I went to YouTube and immediately noticed something odd. Every single suggested video was about moms and daughters in very strange scenarios. It hit me then that she was most likely not only into women, but had a very specific interest. I checked the timestamps to be sure. All of them had been viewed between midnight and 3 a.m. I was so shocked I couldn't stop laughing. When she came back and asked what I was laughing at, I just told her I thought someone else might have been using her YouTube account to watch videos. I didn't want her to know I knew it was her. Her face turned completely red. She said her roommate had been using her computer lately. I left it at that and stopped trying to pursue anything with her. Story 36. Back in 2009, I was starting to get into online Smash Bros. I found a circle of friends there, and we still keep in touch on Facebook and all that. But one person in particular, we'll call her Adrian, introduced me to League of Legends back in 2011 and said I should play it with her. I knew Smash Bros. Was starting to fade for me, and I needed something new, so I gave it a shot. I had no idea what I was doing, but she did, and she always somehow got me to play better. Adrian was really smart and just as fun to play with. Not only was she the best Anivia I'd ever seen, but she never lost her cool or let anything bother her. I really respected her, and I wanted to talk to her about more personal things going on in my life. 2013 was especially tough for me because my mom had cancer. But I was always afraid of being a burden to her and her seemingly great life, or that she wouldn't be able to help with my situation. When I finally opened up, she made me feel genuinely loved and supported. Outside of my mother, I'm not very close with any family, so that meant the world to me. She even gifted me a skin and told me she'd always be there for me. Not long after I told her about what I was going through, she shared a story she had written in high school, a kind of tales fanfic, but filled with memes and humor. She created her own characters, wrote the fight scenes, and had clearly put a lot of time into it. At first, she sent me the files to read on my own, but when she asked me for feedback and I couldn't give her any real thoughts, she got mad. So she made sure I read it by going through the chapters together with her. Through that, I learned so much about her life, her state, her family, the shows she loved, the commercials she grew up with, and the endless stream of internet memes that filled the story. I didn't always look forward to reading just to read, but I loved laughing until my sides hurt from all the chaos in the story. For years, that became our tradition. Play League, read her fanfic, talk about everything. But on Christmas Day 2017, one of her friends, we'll call him Troy, messaged me on League to tell me that Adrian wasn't real. Troy had always been a bit of a troll and wasn't known for being reliable, so I assumed he was joking. He went on to say he found Adrian's pictures on Facebook, but they actually belonged to someone else, a girl named Sherry. He said Adrian had been pretending to be a girl from the very beginning. I still didn't believe him. There was no way the person I had known for 8 years had been faking all of it. But then Troy showed me real evidence. He said he contacted the real Adrian, Sherry, and asked her if she had a League of Legends account or had ever played Smash Bros, and she denied everything. He also found out the truth by looking at the author's name in the metadata of the fanfic files, and the name belonged to someone else. We'll call him Alex. He showed me the real profile, and I knew I couldn't deny it anymore. And then everything clicked. Adrian never showed herself on video, never talked about certain things you'd expect. That day became one of the most depressing moments for me. All I could think was, why would Adrian lie to me? What else did they lie about? I started questioning everything. If Alex could lie about that, how could I trust anything else? He could have gathered a lot of personal info from me, and I wouldn't even know it. I had been catfished for 8 years and had no idea. I almost blocked him and deleted everything related to him. But then I realized something. Alex still talks to me. Even though he must know that Troy told me everything, he never cut ties. If he really wanted to disappear or hide, he would have. And maybe in some way, he wishes he really was Adrian. So no, I don't think I'll ever have the heart to confront him. I hate that he kept that truth from me, but I honestly don't believe he had bad intentions. Story 37. Back in 1991, I worked for a company that needed me to do some work from home, so they gave me a computer, Windows 95, about as big as an end table, to take home. By the time I left, they had upgraded, so they told me I could just keep it. I cleared out all the work files and started using all four of those gigs for personal use. My best friend would sometimes come over and use the computer while we were out of town, or out with other friends, and they didn't feel like tagging along. Many years later, I had a pile of old hard drives that had been sitting in storage, and my kid had an external reader, so we started plugging them in. It was a blast from the past. Old pictures, really dated stuff that would pass as memes today, files, just wild little pieces of our lives that we never thought we'd see again. It was great. Then I found a folder with my best friend's name on it and thought, oh, I'll put all this on a thumb drive. It'll be a fun surprise, a nostalgia trip. Until I came across some files that included chats and content about what appeared to be pretty intense bondage, role play, and power dynamics. Things like collars, bowls, and, well, lessons to be learned. Needless to say, I never brought up the old hard drives or any of the recovered files again, even the innocent ones. My best friend is smart, and it wouldn't take much for them to figure out that if I found one type of content, I probably saw the rest too. Story 38. So I'm in the Navy, and my squadron was in the middle of nowhere on a training mission. When there's nothing to do, people drink. There was this one guy, not exactly the cleanest or most put together, who got extremely drunk and ended up locked out of his barracks room. He decided to sleep in a common area, but first he needed to use the restroom. So he went to his buddy's room, knocked on the door, and got no answer. That's when he made the unfortunate decision to relieve himself, right there in the hallway. Afterward, he walked over to the common area, grabbed a pizza box from the trash, ate a slice, and then placed the box on top of what he had left behind in the hallway. To hide it, I guess. Now, these barracks have cameras everywhere. So the next day, they put all the pieces together and found out exactly who the culprit was. I guess this story doesn't exactly belong here because he definitely didn't get away with it. He never lived it down. I told everyone. Story 39. So here's the backstory. My mom was 15 when she got with my dad, who was 19. They had me when my mom was 21, and my brother when she was 28. Not long after that, she left him. After all the court stuff, I was about 8 when he was given a no-contact order. I haven't spoken to him in about 17 years. Fast forward, I'm hanging out in a nearby town where my now ex was living with his ex's mom, we'll call her Deb, her daughter, and her son Bob. I told my mom who I'd been spending time with to see if she knew them. She started telling me how she and my dad used to hang around Deb and her husband and kids before I was born. And then she just stopped and said, "Oh, and Bob's your brother." What? Turns out when my mom got with my dad, he told her he might have a kid on the way. Deb had said it was a 50-50 chance between my dad and her boyfriend. Her boyfriend believed the baby was his, and they got married and had another kid. They later split up, and that's when Deb apparently told my dad that she was sure Bob was his. She also had another child around that time with an unknown father, and I'm now wondering if that one might also be my dad's. By the time I was born, my parents still visited Deb and the kids about once a month. I was around 3 when my dad went to jail for something small, but it was enough to get him barred from the States. Without him, we stopped visiting as much. Deb was always nice to me, though. She'd even give me Happy Meal toys whenever we went to McDonald's. I don't remember much of it, and I didn't know any of these details until now. But Bob is basically my dad's clone. His dad never questioned anything and still doesn't know about Deb's past. Bob has autism, and I honestly think telling him would do more harm than good. My dad wasn't exactly a role model, so he's not missing anything there. Deb doesn't know I know. The only people who do are me, my mom, my younger brother, and Deb. Sometimes I wonder if Deb's youngest daughter is my sister too. My dad cheated a lot, and Deb was good at keeping secrets. She's around 27 now and has never been told who her father is. This will probably be buried, but I never get to talk about it. It feels good to finally say it out loud. Story 40. In high school, a very close friend of mine, who was also incredibly popular, passed away in a tragic and sudden way. He was the type of person everyone loved, the classic, beloved by all student. He and I had gone to grade school together too, so I had known him and his family since I was about 5 years old. He died in a car accident on the way to a spring dance with his girlfriend. Both of them were killed. The funeral was a double ceremony, and the entire service was centered around how they had planned to get married one day, how they left the world together, and so on. I only mention all of this because after his passing, I found out something that completely changed how I remembered him. My girlfriend at the time told me, shocked and unsure how to even bring it up, that before he died, he had told her he didn't think she was right for me. He had planned to confront me about it and was trying to get her to break up with me and be with him instead. Obviously, I can't ever bring this up with him now, and I don't think I would have if he were still around. It's definitely not something I talk about with people who knew him either. Story 41. The summer after my senior year of high school, I found out that one of my good friends, we'll call him Adam, had been secretly involved with another friend's mom. We'll call that friend Brad. Apparently, Adam had gone over to Brad's house one day to pick up a video game he'd left there. And one thing led to another. He ended up having an intimate encounter with Brad's mom. What followed was a summer-long fling where Adam would meet up with her anytime he could before we all left for college. He even took a bunch of pictures on his digital camera. This was right before smartphones were everywhere. One night during the first week of college, he got drunk and said he missed Brad's mom. I gave him a weird look, and that's when he told me everything about what had happened. Turns out Brad's dad had some health issues and couldn't be physically intimate anymore. His mom had gone 3 years without anything before finally giving in that summer. Adam said they met up constantly. Brad ended up living across the hall from us in the dorms. And as far as I know, even after 18 years, he still doesn't know. One weekend, Adam told Brad he was going to visit a friend at another school. But I knew the truth. His mom had driven up and stayed in a hotel off campus. Adam spent the whole weekend with her, and yes, he showed me the new pictures afterward. Story 42. I had a friend I used to hang out with, along with his wife, for years. One day his business computer suffered a hard drive failure, and he asked if I could try to recover any of the lost data. He made it clear that it was a work computer and wanted me to retrieve anything I could. I took the drive platters out, transferred them to a donor drive, and set up my recovery software. Since data recovery takes a long time, I just let it run overnight. When I came back the next morning to check on it, I was surprised by how much I was able to recover, about 3/4 of the total data. I called him to let him know, and he told me he only wanted business files recovered. He specifically said he wasn't interested in getting personal stuff back, which meant I had to go through everything and manually separate the business-related files. That's when I came across a folder titled Proposal. Assuming it was business-related, I opened it and immediately realized it wasn't. What I saw haunted me for months. Inside were over 300 photos, and the first one I clicked on showed this guy, someone I had known for years, engaged in a very intimate act with another man in what looked like a public restroom. I quickly closed the window and made the decision to just save everything to an external drive for him to sort through on his own. I called him and told him there was too much data to go through, so I was going to give him everything and let him handle it. When I met up with him to return the drive, his wife was with him. I couldn't look either of them in the eye. 2 years later, they divorced, and I always had a strong suspicion about the reason. I spoke with his ex-wife after the divorce, and she revealed that she had discovered his secret life. Apparently, he had been using certain dating apps and posting in online forums for meetups. To this day, he has no idea that I saw that one photo. Story 43. I'm pretty sure, about 90% sure, that my friend's boyfriend of nearly 5 years is interested in men. I once saw a headless profile on a dating app, and the photo immediately looked familiar. It was a cropped image of a man with a woman next to him, her hand resting on his chest. What stood out to me was the hand. It had the most intricate and well-done nails. That's when I realized I recognized it. It was my friend's hand. She's known for always having beautifully designed nails, so it was hard to miss. After a little digging, I found the uncropped version of the photo on my friend's public Instagram. That's when I was almost completely certain. Now I'm 10% unsure because yes, someone could have stolen that image and edited it to create a fake profile. But I've met her boyfriend before, and something about him just gives me that vibe. I'm also gay, and my instincts, my gaydar, have rarely been wrong. Even if I were 100% certain though, I don't think I'd tell her. For one, she might already know. They could be exploring or both be bisual. For another, I don't want to put myself in the middle of that kind of storm, even if I turn out to be right. Story 44. A girl who was once one of my closest friends turned out to have had intimate experiences with several of my other close friends from the past 10 to 12 years. This started long before I met her and only seemed to stop a couple of years ago. It all came to light after I told one of those friends about a certain experience I had with her, only for him to react with clear discomfort. I later found out he had a crush on her and was still dealing with what he'd heard from my sister, who hung out with another one of the guys, saying he also knew her quite well. Let me be clear, I'm not judging her or suggesting anything negative about her choices. The number of people she was with isn't unusual. What's weird is that we all know each other so well, and yet somehow we had no idea we all had something with the same person within a decade. The coincidence is what gets me, not the numbers. I'll never bring it up to her. She knows I'm friends with a couple of them, and when she found that out, without any mention of what had happened, she cringed. So I'll just keep this to myself, because I don't think she realizes just how many overlaps there are. Story 45. About 15 years ago, I was trying to find some family members who had suddenly disappeared, an aunt and a grandmother. What I ended up discovering instead was that I have a half-brother who shares part of my name, and possibly two other half-brothers from different women. I spoke to the one whose name closely resembled mine, and he was so uncomfortable about it that he asked me not to tell my mom. I didn't get the chance to talk with the other possible siblings, and I figured my dad wouldn't be able to keep this a secret forever, especially since social media was starting to become a big thing. Long story short, we never discussed the other sons my father might have had, and I decided not to tell my mom. In the end, I figured that was my dad's business. Eventually, once Facebook was everywhere, all my siblings ended up finding out about at least one of our half-brothers. When I noticed that, I had a conversation with them and, strangely enough, felt some kind of closure or satisfaction. My parents have always had a complicated relationship. My father is an egocentric older man, and my mother has chronic illnesses, which makes these subjects very delicate to even mention around her. Story 46. My dad is a traditional first-generation immigrant from Asia. He's conservative and a bit unpredictable, especially during the recession when he kept getting laid off despite being a very skilled chef. He would go on solo road trips, visiting restaurants listed in classifieds, trying to start his own place, most of which eventually failed. On those long drives, he'd bring along a portable DVD player and watch martial arts films. At the time, I was 16 and learning to drive with my mom. She's old school, very strict, and has only ever been with one man, my father. She would say things like, "You must be doing something inappropriate if you feel like you need to go to the bathroom," while I was just washing dishes. She'd lecture me in the hallway about how men don't want women who've been with others, even though I was a virgin. And somehow at the same time, she'd ask if I was a lesbian because of how unfeminine I was. One day I opened the trunk of our car to toss in a recycling bin to use as a driving marker, and I saw a DVD cover with very explicit adult content. The title and image were extremely graphic. It was clearly something bought discreetly from a small local shop. I quickly covered it up with the recycling bin and never said a word. Not to my mom, not to anyone. Story 47. I work in IT at a high school, so my coworkers often ask me to take a look at their personal computers when they have issues. One teacher and coach, who had just started earlier in the year, brought in his family laptop and asked me to help back up the files before the device died completely. He left it with me, and I started going through the usual locations people save things: desktop, downloads, documents, pictures, videos, and even the root of the C:drive. While checking things, I clicked on a Word document. Because the preview panel was enabled in Windows Explorer, I could see the contents without actually opening the file. What I saw was a letter of resignation from his previous school, explaining that he was stepping down due to an inappropriate relationship with a female student. It didn't go into detail, and the letter was clearly written to present things in the most neutral way possible, likely to avoid making himself look bad. I backed up everything and gave it all back to him without saying a word. He no longer works at our school. He left to become a head coach at another one, but his brother still works here, and his dad is a semi-retired coach from the same school.